Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're venturing into a really fascinating area, the influence of repressed childhood memories.
Yeah, and our way in is Sigmund Freud's analysis of a novella, Wilhelm Jensen's Gradiva.
Right, Gradiva. Now, Freud, as you probably know, was, well, pivotal in exploring the unconscious mind.
Exactly. And this story, Gradiva, even though it's fiction, gave him this amazing framework. He used it to look at how these, deeply buried memories can bubble up.
And how they shape our thoughts, our feelings, even our actions in ways that seem, frankly, pretty surprising sometimes.
Totally. We'll be talking about Norbert Hanold, the main character, an archaeologist.
He gets this really intense fascination, almost an obsession, with an ancient carving of a woman walking.
On the surface, it looks bizarre, right? Like, why this specific carving?
But that's the point. We're going to see how this peculiar interest actually becomes a window into understanding, well, the power of what's hidden beneath our conscious awareness.
So our mission today, really, for everyone listening, is to unpack this idea. How might repressed memories work? What impact can they have?
And we'll do it in, everyday language, drawing on Freud's take on this Gradiva case.
Okay, so let's start there. With Norbert and this bas-relief, what was it about this particular carving that hooked him so strongly?
Right. So the carving itself showed this young woman, and she had a very specific way of walking, a distinctive gait.
And for Norbert, it wasn't just like looking at an old piece of stone.
No, not at all. He described this feeling, a powerful sense of present time. Like he was right there.
Wow.
Yeah. He even made up a name for her, Gradiva.
Which means?
The girl splendid in walking. Pretty fitting, huh? It was like the image resonated really deeply with him somehow.
It's interesting how that starts as maybe an academic thing, but then shifts, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. Norbert's a scholar, right?
Yeah.
Focused on the past. But suddenly, he's fixated on whether this specific walk was, like, a real thing back then.
And this leads him down a slightly unusual path for an academic.
Yeah. Here's where it gets really interesting. This intellectual question turns into almost a scientific obsession.
He starts observing real women.
Yes. He starts watching contemporary women trying to spot anyone who walks like Gradiva.
Which, as you said, is totally out of character. This is a guy normally lost in ancient texts.
Exactly. Before this, women were just, and I think this is a quote, conceptions in marble or bronze to him. He barely noticed the real world.
So that contrast is huge. This sudden, intense focus on a physical detail in living people. It really suggests something else is going on under the surface, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Something unconscious is definitely stirring.
And then it goes even further with the dream.
The Pompeii dream.
Right.
Yeah, this is critical. He has this incredibly vivid dream. He's transported right back to Pompeii.
On the day of the eruption.
The very day. Chaos, destruction all around.
Right.
Right there he sees Gradiva.
But not as a carving.
No, as a living, breathing Pompeian woman, a contemporary of that time.
That must have felt incredibly real, incredibly intense.
Hugely intense. The dream has this massive emotional impact on him. It basically cements his belief that Gradiva actually existed in Pompeii.
The fear he feels for her in the dream, witnessing this disaster, it really points to a powerful internal connection being forged.
Even if he has no idea why he feels that connection yet.
Right. It's all happening unconsciously.
And then the line between the dream world and the waking world starts to get fuzzy for him.
He wakes up still feeling the effects of it.
Totally. He wakes up from this terrifying dream, goes out into the street, and bam, he thinks he sees her again. Gradiva recognizes the walk instantly.
And this prompts a big decision.
A very impulsive one. He basically packs his bags on the spot and heads off to Italy.
Driven by?
Jensen calls it a nameless feeling. He's going to Pompeii. He wants to find actual proof, like footprints in the ash, of her unique gait.
That nameless feeling, classic sign of the unconscious at work, wouldn't you say? A pull towards something you can't consciously explain.
Definitely. The academic quest is now totally personal, driven by this.
Yeah.
This deep internal urge he doesn't understand.
Okay, so he gets to Pompeii, searching for traces of his Gradiva. What happens next?
Well, this is where reality, or something like it, intrudes. He encounters a living woman. Her name is Zoe Bertgang.
And she looks like the Gradiva from the relief.
Strikingly similar. The resemblance is uncanny.
Wow. Okay, so Norbert's already in this kind of delusional state, obsessed with the ancient Gradiva.
And now he's face to face with a real person who looks just like her. It must have been incredibly confusing.
Trying to square that circle, His fantasy figure is suddenly right there, alive.
Yeah, you can imagine the mental acrobatics. He's trying to fit this real flesh and blood woman into the framework of his delusion.
So he interacts with her, but still thinks she's the ancient Gradiva.
Pretty much. He's still caught up in his own version of reality, talking to her as if she's this figure from the past he's brought back.
And this is where Freud steps in with his interpretation, which is really the core of what we're discussing.
Exactly. Freud looks at this whole situation, the obsession, the dream, the trip, the confusion with Zoe, and says, hang on.
It's not random.
Not at all. He argues that Norbert's intense fixation on Gradiva is actually rooted in something much deeper. Repressed memories.
Memories of a childhood love.
Precisely. A girl he knew as a child, who's also named Zoe.
Wait, also Zoe, like the woman he meets in Pompeii?
The very same. And here's the kicker. The connection Freud makes that just clicks everything into place.
The name.
Her last name, Bertgang. Freud points out that Bertgang has the exact same meaning as Gradiva.
Which was?
Splendid in walking.
Whoa, okay. That's quite a connection.
Isn't it? It's a real aha moment. So the bas-relief, with its focus on that distinctive walk.
It wasn't just any walk, it acted as a trigger.
Exactly. It unconsciously reminded Norbert of his past relationship with his childhood Zoe. That specific gait was the focal point because it was linked unconsciously to her.
So, for anyone listening, think about that. A seemingly minor detail in the present. Maybe a song, a smell, the way someone walks.
Yeah, it could be an unexpected trigger. Something that connects back to a forgotten emotional experience, maybe from way back.
And recognizing those links might be a first step to understanding some of our own strong, maybe sometimes confusing reactions to things.
Right. The visual cue of the walk just kind of bypassed his conscious defenses.
Those mental blocks that keep certain memories down, it slipped right past them.
And activated those buried memories associated with the childhood Zoe. It wasn't just about admiring ancient art, it was about her.
And the setting, Pompeii. Freud had thoughts on that too, didn't he? It wasn't just a random place for this encounter.
No, he saw it as highly symbolic. Pompeii, this city frozen by the eruption, buried but preserved.
It mirrored Norbert's own mind.
Perfectly. It became this powerful, symbolic landscape for Norbert's own repressed memories, which were also sort of buried deep inside him.
That's a potent metaphor. Excavating ruins, excavating memories.
And Zoe herself even makes a comment about being excavated from the ashes when she talks to Norbert.
Wow, that really ties it together. The external setting reflects his internal state, the past, buried but waiting to be rediscovered.
So what about the dreams? We mentioned the big Pompeii dream. How did Freud interpret those?
He saw them as expressions of Norbert's unconscious desires and memories, all linked back to the childhood Zoe.
But disguised, right? Not straightforward.
Exactly. They weren't clear memories resurfacing. They were symbolic, distorted, like the dream of Gradiva in Pompeii.
That reflected his unconscious wish to reconnect with his lost love.
Plausibly, yes. In a setting that represents time being stopped, preserved, it's like the unconscious speaks in code.
Using symbols and scenarios to represent feelings or conflicts that can't be faced directly.
Right. The direct memory is blocked, but the emotional energy behind it finds another outlet, like through the dream. It's a safer way for the unconscious to process things.
Okay, now back to the real Zoe in Pompeii. She plays a pretty crucial role in helping Norbert snap out of it, doesn't she?
Oh, absolutely. Whether she's fully aware of what she's doing or just acting intuitively, she's key.
How so?
She engages with him within his delusion initially. She doesn't just shut him down and say, "You're crazy."
She kind of plays along.
To an extent. But she subtly guides him, challenges the delusion gently, leading him back towards reality.
And there's that detail about her knowing his name.
Yes, that's a big one. She knows his name, even though he hasn't told her yet in their Pompeii encounters.
Which hints at
a prior connection. It starts to poke holes in his fantasy that she's only the ancient Gradiva. It suggests she might be someone he actually knows.
And there are other weird overlaps, too, between his delusion and reality. Like the hotel.
Right. He imagines Gradiva is staying at the Seoul Hotel.
And it turns out that's exactly where the real Zoe and her father are staying.
More than just coincidence, Freud would argue. It suggests the unconscious is still picking up real-world details, even while the conscious mind is off in fantasyland.
Like the unconscious is trying to bridge the gap, leaving little clues.
Kind of like breadcrumbs, yeah. Trying to connect the internal fantasy back to external reality, back to the truth about Zoe.
So it seems like Norbert's whole academic life, his passion for archaeology.
It becomes intertwined with his emotional needs.
Yeah, it's like the lens through which his unconscious is working things out. He's using the past, his area of study, to process these buried feelings about the personal past.
That's a great way to put it. His intellectual side gets kind of hijacked, or at least heavily influenced, by his unconscious emotional world.
The past isn't just history books, it's the stage for his own internal drama.
Exactly.
So how does it all resolve? How does he finally connect the dots?
The breakthrough comes when he finally consciously recognizes Zoe.
As the woman from Pompeii?
As Zoe Burtgang, his childhood friend, the actual person he knew years ago.
So the repressed memory finally breaks through into his conscious mind.
Precisely. And once that happens, once he makes that connection, the delusion about Gradiva starts to dissolve.
Because the need for it is gone.
Essentially, yes. Confronting the buried memory, bringing it into the light, is what allows the healing to begin. The return of the repressed leads to the resolution.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Bringing it all together, thinking about Norbert's strange journey through Freud's eyes. What's the main takeaway for us, for you listening?
Well, I think the biggest insight is just how powerful these hidden, repressed childhood memories can be.
Even though we're not consciously aware of them?
Right. They can still exert this really strong, sometimes quite unexpected influence on our present lives.
Shaping our interests, like Norbert's sudden obsession.
Our fantasies, our perceptions of reality, even. It can be pretty profound, as the Gradiva story illustrates.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? About our own lives. Those intense interests we might have, or behaviors that seem a bit irrational sometimes.
Could they be echoes? Subtle clues pointing back to things we've forgotten. Experiences from our past that are still active, just under the surface.
It poses a provocative question, maybe something for you to think about later. Could some of our most persistent, maybe inexplicable, attractions or beliefs, could they actually be these reverberations from a past we don't consciously recall?
Like they're waiting to be, well, excavated, like Zoe said, from the depths of our own minds. It's definitely food for thought.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this deep dive looking at Gradiva and Freud, it just scratches the surface, really.
Oh, yeah. The ideas about repressed memories, the unconscious.
Yeah.
It's a vast and fascinating area.
So if this sparked your curiosity, there's plenty more to explore. But for now, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.